My mother's funeral. After the death of a secret billionaire, my husband immediately divorced me while I was pregnant with his child in order to marry my half-sister from the same father. Mom, please don't leave me. Not today. Not like this. Those were the last words. Ree Malone sobbed into her mother's chest as the heart monitor flatlined in that sterile Los Angeles hospital room. She couldn't believe it when barely hours after burying the woman who'd sacrificed everything for her, her husband Elias stepped out during the funeral, phone glued to his ear, and never fully returned. Riley stood there 7 months pregnant with the baby, who would never know its grandmother, dressed in black under the drizzling rain at the cemetery on the outskirts of L.A. She watched through tears as Elias took yet another urgent call, walking away without a backward glance, leaving her alone by the grave while fresh dirt still covered the casket. What broke her wasn't just the abandonment in her darkest moment, it was the glimpse of a woman standing far off under a black umbrella, face half hidden, staring at the procession with an expression Ree couldn't place, familiar yet cold. And in less than a day after her mom's final breath, Elias would make a choice that shattered everything. Ree thought she knew about love, family, and loyalty. He'd organized a late-night symbolic ceremony at one of those 24/7 chapels in LA with that same woman posting pictures online, like it was something to celebrate while Ree was still grieving. What Elias didn't know, what that woman didn't realize as she smiled in those photos, was that Riley's mom, the quiet night shift worker at a convenience store who'd given up everything for true love, wasn't just ordinary. She was a secret billionaire who'd walked away from $6.8 billion to build a real life. And when Riley finally opened what her mom left behind, the screams of regret would echo louder than any funeral bell. If you've ever been betrayed by the people closest to you, right when you needed them most, if you felt abandoned, underestimated, or left to grieve alone, hit that follow button right now, because Ree's story will show you that sometimes the ones who walk away are removing themselves from a blessing they never deserved. Smash like if you believe in karma and that real strength comes from within. Comment below. Have you ever lost someone who loved you unconditionally, only to face betrayal from those left behind? Share your story to honor them, and tell me, where are you watching from today? This one's for everyone who's been protected in ways they didn't yet understand. The hospital room in Los Angeles felt like it had become Riley's entire world. She hadn't left her mother's side for days, sleeping in the uncomfortable vinyl chair, waking every time the monitors beeped a little differently. Pearl Riley lay beneath the thin white blanket, her dark skin looking almost gray against the sheets, the cancer having taken so much weight that she seemed smaller than Riley remembered. Ree kept a cool cloth on her mother's forehead, changing it every hour, wiping away the sweat that came with each wave of pain. She fed her mother small spoonfuls of broth when she was awake enough, holding the cup steady with one hand while gripping Pearl's fingers with the other. Pearl's voice was barely above a whisper, now raspy from the treatments, but she still tried to talk as if she knew time was running out. She spoke about the late shifts at the convenience store on the edge of the city, how the fluorescent lights buzzed all night, and the coffee machine always smelled burnt. She smiled faintly, remembering how Riley's dad would swing by after his own shift, bringing takeout burgers or tacos in grease-stained bags. The two of them eating in the back room like teenagers on a date. Pearl's eyes lit up, telling about those short weekend getaways they could afford. Driving out to the beach or up into the hills, packing sandwiches and a thermos of coffee, finding free spots to park and just sit watching the sunset. Riley listened, tears silent on her cheeks, holding her mother's hand tighter. Pearl never complained about the worn-out purse she carried for years, always turning the logo side inward when she thought no one was looking. One afternoon, a man in a neat suit appeared at the door, saying he was an old acquaintance from way back. Pearl's expression changed immediately. She shook her head weakly and asked Riley to tell him she was resting, couldn't have visitors. Riley walked the man out, noticing how he lingered in the hallway before leaving. When she returned, Pearl squeezed her hand and said, voice soft but firm, "Some doors are better left closed, baby." The pain came in waves, and Riley learned to read the signs, the tightening of her mother's jaw, the sharp intake of breath. She'd press the call button for the nurse, adjust the pillows, whisper that it would pass soon. At night, when the hospital quieted down, Pearl would drift in and out, sometimes squeezing Riley's fingers like she used to. When Ree was little and afraid of thunder, Riley talked to fill the silence, telling her mother about the baby kicking, how strong the movements had become, promising Pearl would hold her granddaughter soon. Pearl would smile in her sleep, or murmur something Ree couldn't quite catch. There were moments when Pearl seemed almost like her old self, eyes sharp, voice clearer, sharing small stories Ree had heard 100 times, but never tired of how she met Riley's dad at a community event. How he made her laugh until her sides hurt. How she knew right then he was the one worth everything. She never spoke about what she gave up, never hinted at anything beyond their simple life. Riley cherished every word, storing them like treasures. As the days blurred together, Pearl grew quieter, sleeping more, eating less. The doctors spoke in gentle tones about comfort care, about making sure she wasn't in pain. Riley nodded, signed papers, held her mother's hand through it all. One evening, as the sun set over the city skyline visible through the window, Pearl opened her eyes wide for the first time in hours. She looked at Riley with such clarity. It took her breath away. Her lips moved. Voice barely audible. In my apartment. Bedroom closet. Old shoebox, there's a key. Riley leaned closer. Heart pounding. Safety deposit box. Local bank, everything you need is there. Pearl's grip tightened with surprising strength. Only open it when you're ready, when you really need it. Then her eyes closed, breathing shallower. Riley stayed there all night watching the monitors, whispering promises, refusing to let go. When the flatline came in the early hours, the sound cut through. Ry like nothing else ever had. Nurses rushed in, but Ry didn't move. Couldn't move, clinging to her mother's hand, as if she could pull her back by sheer will. The room filled with quiet activity, voices soft and professional. Someone gently told her it was time. Riley finally let go, pressing her face into the blanket that still held her mother's warmth. Breathing in the faint scent of the lotion Pearl always used. She sat there long after they covered her mother with a sheet, long after the room emptied, holding the worn jacket Pearl had kept draped over the chair. The silence was deafening. Riley didn't cry anymore. The tears had run dry. She just sat, hand on her belly, feeling the baby move as if trying to comfort her. Her mother was gone, and in her pocket, the weight of that key felt heavier than anything she'd ever carried. The light drizzle at the cemetery on the outskirts of Los Angeles turned the ground soft and muddy. Riley remained by the open grave, her 7-month belly, making every movement heavier, raindrops, soaking through her black coat and chilling her skin. Elias stood nearby, head bowed, hands in his pockets. No umbrella offered. No arm around her shoulders. He stayed silent, eyes downcast until his phone vibrated again. He glanced at the screen, muttered something about work, and stepped away toward the parking lot to take the call. Riley watched him go, expecting him to return quickly, but minutes stretched on. The preacher finished the final prayer, and the small group of attendees, mostly former co-workers from the convenience store, approached one by one to offer condolences. An older cashier hugged Ree, gently whispering how Pearl had always been the kindest soul on the night shift. Another stalker pressed a small flower into her hand, saying, "Pearl treated everyone like family." Ree nodded through it all. Voice caught in her throat, hand resting protectively on her stomach. As the baby shifted inside, the casket lowered slowly, the sound of dirt hitting wood muffled by the rain. When the crowd thinned, Ree lingered, unable to leave just yet. Elias never came back. She finally walked alone to the car, coat clinging, wet shoes sinking in the grass. Driving home to her mother's modest house in the suburbs felt surreal. The familiar streets blurred through the windshield, wipers inside the place smelled faintly of pearls, lavender soap, and fresh laundry. Riley hung her coat, sat on the worn couch where her mother used to read or watch old shows, and let the quiet settle the fridge, hummed the clock, ticked everything exactly as it had been, yet completely different. She pulled out her phone to check messages. Scrolling absent-mindedly, a notification popped up from a mutual friend tagging Elias. In photos, Riley tapped and her breath caught. The images showed Elias and a woman named Paige at one of those famous 24/7 wedding chapels downtown. Simple attire, standing before a floral arch, holding hands as an officiant smiled behind them. Paige beamed brightly beside Elias, her arm linked through his. The caption read simply, "New beginnings," posted just hours earlier. Ree zoomed in, heart pounding. Paige was the same woman who'd stood at a distance during the service under that black umbrella, watching everything. Memories, flickered brief encounters years ago when her dad was still alive. Paige reaching out occasionally through short messages or chance meetings arranged by him. One comment stuck in Riley's mind, something Paige had said offhand. "You always have people around you." It hadn't meant much then, but now it echoed strangely. Ree stared at the photos longer. The chapel's neon sign glowing in the background. The timestamp confirming it happened late the previous night. The ceremony looked rushed, joyful on the surface, but the timing twisted something deep inside her. She set the phone down, hands trembling slightly. Everything felt off balance, like the ground had shifted. Without warning, the house creaked in the wind, rain patterning against the windows. Riley leaned back, closing her eyes, trying to make sense of the ache building in her chest. The baby kicked again, strong and insistent, as if reminding her she wasn't entirely alone. She placed both hands on her belly, breathing slow, the uncertainty growing like the storm outside. Elias pulled up to the suburban house in Los Angeles the next morning, parking his car behind Riley. In the driveway, he carried a small overnight bag and a thick folder tucked under his arm. The front door was unlocked, and he let himself in, the familiar creak of the hinges echoing in the quiet space. Riley sat on the living room couch, still in the same clothes from the day before, hands folded over her belly. She looked up as he entered, expression neutral, waiting. Elias placed the bag near the entrance, then lowered himself into the armchair. Across from her, he leaned forward, elbows on knees, staring at the worn rug. Between them, the silence stretched heavy and uncomfortable. Finally, he spoke, voice low and drained. I can't see us going forward like this. He rubbed his palms together. Avoiding her gaze every day. Feels like I'm shrinking, like I'm not the man I want to be. He paused, searching for words. With you. Everything reminds me of responsibilities I wasn't ready for. Riley remained still, fingers lightly tracing circles on her stomach, feeling the steady rhythm of the baby's movements. Elias glanced up briefly, then backed down. Paige makes me feel alive again. She sees potential in me. Pushes me to chase what I really want. He said it almost apologetically, as if the admission surprised even him. Riley absorbed the words, face unchanging. No outburst, no tears. She asked quietly, and the child we're having. Elias shifted in the seat. Tone, softening but evasive. I'll be there financially. Full support, no question. College fund, everything. He reached for the folder, opening it on the coffee table. The divorce papers lay inside neatly. Organized signatures needed in several places. It's straightforward, no fault, clean break. You keep the house if you want. Leaned forward, picking up the pages one by one. She read the sections carefully, asset division, custody, preliminary child support. Outlined, her pen hovered for a moment. Then she signed firmly at each marked line. Initials crisp. Date, filled in. She slid the folder back across the table. Elias took it, eyes widening slightly at the speed, the lack of fight. He stood back in hand, moving toward the door at the threshold. He stopped back to her hand on the knob, his shoulders tensed as if weighing whether to turn around. Then he stepped out, pulling the door closed behind him with a soft click. The sound echoed through the empty rooms. Riley stayed seated, the house settling into deeper stillness. Sun streamed through the windows, highlighting dust particles dancing in the air. She placed both palms on her belly, feeling another strong kick. The life inside asserting itself. Hours passed without movement. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, marking time. She barely noticed memories surfaced uninvited the evenings. Elias came home late from work, the way he used to rub her feet when she was tired. The plans they made for the nursery, that now felt like another lifetime. She pushed them aside, focusing on the present emptiness. The numbness wrapped around her like a blanket, protecting and isolating at once. Eventually, she rose, legs stiff from sitting so long. She walked to the bedroom, opened the closet door, reached for the shelf above the hanging clothes. The shoebox was there just as her mother described. Brought it down, sat on the bed, lifted the lid. Tissue paper rustled as she unwrapped the small metal key. It glinted in the light. Simple but solid. She held it for a long minute, turning it over in her fingers. Then she stood, grabbed her purse and car keys from the hook by the door. The drive downtown to the bank branch in central Los Angeles took longer than usual, traffic building. As the day progressed, Riley parked in the underground garage, walked through the lobby, approached the service desk. She presented. ID mentioned the safety deposit box number from memory. The attendant verified details, led her to the secure vault area. 2 keys turned in unison, hers and the bank's. The long metal box slid out smoothly. Riley carried it to the private booth, closed the door, and set it on the table. Her pulse quickened as she reached for the latch. The private booth at the bank in central Los Angeles was small and soundproof. The door clicking shut behind Riley with a soft finality. She sat at the narrow table, the metal safety deposit box in front of her looking ordinary, almost underwhelming. Her fingers trembled slightly as she lifted the lid all the way inside. Lay a thick envelope. Cream-colored, addressed in her mother's familiar handwriting. For my Riley, open when your heart tells you to. Next to it, a single sheet of bank stationery with an appointment notice and a phone number printed neatly at the bottom. Riley picked up the envelope first, feeling its weight. The paper crisp under her touch. She slid it open carefully with a letter opener from the table, pulling out several folded pages filled with Pearl's looping script. The words began with love, simple and direct. My dearest girl. If you are reading this, I'm no longer there to hold your hand, but know I'm still with you in every beat of your heart. Pearl wrote about the joy of watching Ree grow from tiny steps to the strong woman she'd become. She recalled quiet evenings on the porch swing, sharing ice cream and dreams, laughing over small things that meant the world. She spoke of forgiveness, not as weakness, but as the greatest strength. Releasing poison from your own soul before it consumed you. People make mistakes, baby, some big, some small. Holding on to anger only chains you. Letting go sets you free to live the life you deserve. Pearl shared memories of hard times turned sweet by love. The power outages when they lit candles and told stories, the lean months when they made games out of simple meals. She wrote about choosing your path every day, about how true power came from deciding who you wanted to be, no matter what life threw at you. Strength isn't about never falling. It's about rising every time. Head high, heart open. She described the pride in Ree's kindness, the way she cared for others, even when hurting herself. Don't ever let anyone make you feel less than the incredible person you are. Pearl reminded her daughter of the little rituals. They shared braiding hair on Sunday mornings, planting herbs in pots, on the windowsill, dancing in the kitchen to old songs on the radio. Those moments are your treasure, more valuable than anything money could buy. She urged Riley to love fiercely but wisely, to protect her heart without closing it. Love the child you're carrying with everything you have. Teach her the same lessons. I tried to teach you that she's worthy, that she's enough, that she's loved beyond measure. The letter continued with gentle advice on facing loss, on finding joy in new beginnings, on building a life rooted in authenticity. Pearl ended with words that blurred through Riley's tears. I'm so proud of the woman you've become. Live fully, love deeply, forgive freely. Everything I've prepared is there when you need it, to ensure you never have to bow your head to anyone. You are my greatest legacy. All my love forever, Mom. Riley read the pages multiple times, tracing the ink with her fingertips, absorbing every curve of the letters as if they could bring her mother back. Drops fell onto the paper, smudging a few words, but she didn't wipe them away. The scent of Pearl's favorite pen ink seemed to rise from the page, mixing with the faint lavender note she always used. Riley folded the letter carefully, held it against her chest, closing her eyes, the warmth from the words wrapped around her like an embrace, easing the ache just a fraction. She sat that way for a long while, breathing in the quiet, letting the message sink deep. The appointment notice lay untouched for now, the phone number waiting. Ree pressed the envelope to her heart, rocking slightly, whispering thanks into the empty room. The baby shifted inside her, a gentle reminder of life continuing. She stayed until the light outside shifted, until she felt ready to carry her mother's words with her into whatever came next. Ree lingered in her mother's suburban house on the outskirts of Los Angeles. The days blending into one another, she moved through the room, slowly touching familiar objects. A framed photo on the mantel, the worn armchair, where Pearl used to knit, the kitchen counter. Still holding the coffee mug from that last morning, the envelope and appointment notice stayed on the bedside table, unopened again after that first read. She cooked simple meals, ate little, walked the neighborhood streets when the baby's kicks grew restless. Doubt crept in during quiet moments. What if accepting whatever waited changed everything she knew about her life, about her mother? The phone number stared back each time she picked up the paper. Finally, one afternoon, with sunlight streaming through the window, Riley dialed. A calm voice answered, confirming the appointment, inviting her to the office in Manhattan Beach. The next day, Riley arrived early, parking near the beachside building with its modern glass facade and ocean view. The receptionist led her to a conference room overlooking the water, soft waves visible in the distance. Franklin Vaughn entered first, a man in his 60s with kind eyes and a warm handshake, dressed in a tailored suit that spoke of quiet confidence. Nancy Lane followed, sharp-featured and professional, carrying a leather portfolio. They sat across from Riley at the Polish table, offering water and a moment to settle. Franklin spoke first, voice gentle. I'm Franklin Vaughn, a distant cousin on your mother's side, a branch of the family you may not have known. He explained the connection briefly, how Pearl had kept ties minimal to protect her chosen life. Nancy opened her portfolio, spreading documents neatly. Your mother came from the Dupont-Vaughn line, a family with significant holdings. She walked away from decades ago to follow her heart. Riley listened, hands folded over her belly, the words landing like distant thunder. Franklin continued, sliding a summary across. Pearl restructured everything years ago into an irrevocable trust, designed to be untouchable, meant solely for you. He paused, letting the numbers sink in. The current value stands at $6,800 million. Riley stared at the figure on the page, the digits blurring. It felt unreal, like numbers from a headline about strangers. Fear rose sharp in her chest, the weight of it all, the responsibility, the shift it would bring. She pressed a hand to her stomach, grounding herself with the baby's movement. Nancy spoke softly about the structure, how Pearl had managed it discreetly, through trusted advisors, growing it steadily without fanfare. Franklin added a personal note. Your mother once trusted someone close, who let her down badly. It taught her to build protections that no one could break. He didn't name names, just let the lesson hang. Riley absorbed it all. Questions swirling, how her mother balanced such secrets with their simple days. Why she never hinted the ocean view outside seemed calmer than the storm inside her. She asked about control, about options, voice steady despite the turmoil. They assured her everything was hers, to direct, no obligations beyond what she chose. Hours passed in discussion, details unfolding like layers. Riley felt the shift, Gradually, the fear mixing with a strange sense of possibility. By the end, she nodded. Accepting the reality, she expressed her wish to create a foundation, helping single mothers, women starting over. Nancy smiled, pulling forms. We can set it up immediately. Riley added one request. Send invitations for the launch gala to my ex-husband, Elias and Paige. She wanted to see their faces when the truth came out. One last time Franklin agreed without question, noting the addresses. Riley left the office as the sun dipped toward the horizon, the beach breeze carrying salt air. The drive home felt different. The city lights beginning to flicker on. She placed a hand on her belly, whispering to the child inside about new beginnings, built on her own terms. The exclusive club in Los Angeles gleamed under evening lights. Crystal chandeliers, casting soft glows over white tablecloths and floral centerpieces. Guests mingled in formal attire. Conversation humming with anticipation for the new foundation's launch. Elias and Paige arrived together, stepping into the grand hall. With practiced confidence, Paige wore a striking red gown that turned heads the fabric. Hugging her figure, her hair swept up, elegantly. Elias, in a dark suit, kept a hand at her back, smiling at acquaintances as they navigated the crowd. They accepted flutes of champagne from passing servers, exchanging pleasantries about careers and connections, eyes scanning for influential faces. Riley entered a few minutes later, drawing quiet attention in an elegant maternity gown of deep emerald silk that flowed gracefully over her bump. She moved with composed assurance, greeting board members and donors, her presence commanding without effort. The program began with a short video highlighting stories of women rebuilding lives, voices overlapping with images of strength and resilience. Then Ree took the stage, microphone in hand, the room falling hushed. She spoke briefly. Voice steady and warm. Tonight celebrates women who face unimaginable loss, yet find the courage to stand again. She shared a glimpse of her own path, losing her mother, navigating alone while carrying new life. The journey taught me that true power comes not from what we have, but from how we choose to rise. Applause rippled through the audience, genuine and supportive. Ree paused, expression calm. To illustrate that choice, I'd like to share something personal. The large screen behind her lit up with a single image. The photo from social media of Elias and Paige at the 247 chapel, dressed simply, standing before the floral arch, arms linked below it, their caption in bold letters, New Beginnings. The timestamp clearly showed the night of Pearl's funeral. A collective intake of breath swept the room. Riley continued quietly. This was posted the very night of my mother's funeral. While I was still mourning, she let the words hang, no accusation in her tone. Just fact. The timing felt like abandonment. At my most vulnerable moment, Paige lowered her head, color draining from her face, fingers tightening around her glass. Elias shifted beside her, jaw, clenched eyes darting to exits. Guests exchanged glances, whispers starting low then growing. Riley met their gazes directly. I share this not for drama, but to show the pain one decision can cause, and the strength required to move forward. Anyway, the screen faded to the foundation logo. Applause came slowly at first, then stronger, directed at Riley's poise. Elias set his drink down, abruptly murmuring to Paige. They moved toward the side exit, faces flushed under the lights in the hallway outside the main hall. Voices rose sharply. Paige hissed first. You knew the timing was cruel. Why didn't you stop it? Elias shot back. Tone defensive. You pushed for the photos. Said it would send a message. Their words echoed off marble walls, heated and raw. Paige's voice cracked. You knew who I really was to her. Yet, you went along for what? The connections you thought she'd bring, Elias retorted bitterly. You never told me the full story until after. I thought it was just an ex's drama. Paige laughed, coldly. Convenient memory. You stayed silent because it suited you. Fists clenched. They faced each other, years of choices unraveling in moments, a few guests passing by, averted eyes. The argument spilling into the open. Security approached discreetly, but the pair stormed out separate doors, the night air swallowing their shouts back inside. Riley stepped down from the stage amid warm support, hand on her belly, feeling the baby kick as if in approval. The gala continued, conversations turning to the foundation's mission with renewed energy. Donors pledged generously. Inspired by the raw honesty, recirculated, accepting congratulations, the weight of the evening settling with quiet resolve. Sky. Pearl Malone came into the world on a quiet morning at a Los Angeles hospital. Her cry, strong and clear from the start. Riley held her daughter close, tears mixing with exhaustion and joy. The room filled with soft light filtering through the blinds. She brought the baby home to a new house in the suburbs, a modest place with a small yard and plenty of windows for sunlight. Life settled into a rhythm of feedings, lullabies, and late-night walks when sleep wouldn't come. The foundation grew steadily, offices opening across California, programs expanding to shelter, counseling, and job training for women rebuilding. After hardship, Riley oversaw it all, traveling for events, reviewing grants, celebrating each success story as if it were her own. Hundreds found help through the years. Mothers escaping bad situations, women starting over after loss, all receiving the support Pearl would have wanted. Riley kept boundaries firm with Elias. Court. Ordered visits happened a handful of times. Supervised in neutral locations, always strained and brief. Elias arrived on time, gifts in hand, attempting small talk about work or weather. Sky, curious at first, grew quiet during those meetings, clinging to her mother's leg as she got older. Questions came why Daddy lived somewhere else, why he wasn't at birthdays or school plays. Ree answered honestly, but gently focusing on the love she and Sky shared every day. By the time Sky turned 5, she stopped asking to see him. One evening after a visit was cancelled again, she looked up at Riley and said, simply, "I don't want to go anymore." Riley hugged her tight, heart aching, but respecting the choice. Paige and Elias parted ways. Not long after the gala fallout, the divorce was quick, public enough to damage reputations in their circles. Paige moved into a small apartment downtown, the kind with thin walls and street noise at night. She took a lower-paying job, avoided old friends, spent evenings alone with takeout and television. Night brought reflection, the childhood memories of waiting for visits that sometimes didn't happen. The resentment built over years of feeling second place. She saw, now, how that pain twisted into choices that hurt others, including herself. No grand apologies came, just quiet acknowledgement in therapy sessions she finally attended. Aaliyah struggled longer. Jobs slipped away as word spread. Associations with scandal made employers hesitant. He bounced between contracts. Living in a rented condo that felt temporary regret. Nodded him in silent moments. Missed birthdays. The daughter who no longer reached for him. He wrote letters he never sent. Drove past the old house sometimes, but never stopped courage to face what he'd broken. Stayed out of reach. Riley dated occasionally, introductions, careful for Sky's sake. Connections formed then faded. Trust, hard to rebuild. After betrayal, she poured energy into her daughter, and the work finding fulfillment in both evenings on the porch with Sky became ritual, reading books, stargazing, talking about everything from bugs to dreams. Riley taught her about kindness without naivety, strength without hardness, love without possession. One gentle afternoon, they drove to the cemetery on the outskirts of Los Angeles. The grass was green. Wild flowers scattered near the headstone. Sky ran ahead, placing fresh daisies from the garden in the vase. Riley stood beside her, hand on the stone etched with Pearl's name. Wind rustled the trees, carrying distant city sounds. Sky slipped her small hand into Riley's. "Mommy, is Grandma watching us?" Riley smiled, eyes misty. "Every day, sweetheart." They stayed until the sun lowered, shadows lengthening across the grounds. Driving home, Ree glanced at her daughter, singing along to the radio, window down, hair flying. The bitterness of past hurts lingered, a faint scar rather than open wound. She chose each day to live with integrity, to build rather than destroy. That choice, Ree knew, was the real inheritance. Her mother left one no amount of money could buy. And in quiet moments, she spoke to the empty air, to Pearl. To anyone listening, the people who leave who hurt us most, they make room for the life we were meant to live. True wealth isn't in bank accounts or perfect families. It's in the courage to rise, to love anyway, to choose who we become when no one's watching. That's the lesson I carry, the one I'll pass to my daughter. Because sometimes the greatest revenge is simply becoming the person they underestimated, and finding peace in knowing your worth was never theirs to define.